Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Ferry Project Cookery School. And this morning we're going to make 3 different breads, and I'll show you. I've already baked 3 this morning. It smells really lovely in here. So we're going to make some of those, and then I'll show you what the finished ones look like. So we're talking about no knead bread. We make quite a lot of bread here at the Cookery School. If you haven't seen us before, go to our website, ferryproject.org. And have a look at us, click on Cookery School. We are here predominantly to teach our hostel clients who are part of our homeless charity to cook, so that when they go back into their real homes, their forever homes hopefully, then they know how to cook and can. And then we also run lots of other different cookery classes to members of the public, but also go out into the community and have people come here as well and do all sorts of cooking. Something different every day, so it's really good fun. Today we are looking at no knead bread. So you know, we all think, oh, bread, it takes hours, you have to knead, you need muscles, you're going to knead it for 10 minutes, and but you don't need to, you don't have to do that. You can make bread without all that kneading process. It does take longer, but it actually doesn't require very much time and effort from you personally. So I'm going to do a no knead bread. I'm also going to make a soda bread, and I'm also going to make a bread using beer, because it gives it a lovely light texture using the beer in there. But we'll get the no knead bread on the go first. So a few points about no knead bread. Just as if you're making bread, you're going to use gluten flour, so strong bread flour. The key thing about bread making is the gluten in it. The gluten, it's made of 2 proteins, glutenin and gliadin. When they get wet, they merge and they form something called gluten. And that goes really elastic and stretchy when it's wet. So it's so important for bread making, because we're going to have yeast in there. The yeast is going to create carbon dioxide. So the minute we add the water to the yeast starts to use the natural sugars in the flour and starts the fermentation process off alcohol and carbon dioxide. The alcohol is then destroyed during cooking, and the carbon dioxide gets trapped in those stretchy gluten strands, and that stretchy gluten then is pushed outwards by that carbon dioxide, making your bread rise, leaving lovely pockets of air in there. And with no knead, you get those pockets of air because you leave it for a much longer proving time, rising time. So whereas if I was making bread, I would do exactly what I'm about to do, and I would knead it for 10 minutes, and then I'd probably leave it for about an hour and a half, then I'd knock it back, and then I'd bake it. With no knead bread, the whole premise is a much, much longer fermentation time. So whereas when you knead it, you're working those gluten strands, you're making sure the yeast is getting contact with the sugars in the flour, and you're stretching it to help the gluten work the gluten, basically, so it becomes really elastic and rises. With no knead bread, we're aiming for the water. It's all about the hydration of the starch in the flour. So it's got slightly higher water content than normal bread and slightly less yeast. Don't need quite as much yeast. So let's get on and make the dough. So I have got strong bread flour. So it's got a higher gluten content than other flour. So I mean, you could use plain flour, but it won't rise as much. You haven't got that stretchiness to it. So into my flour, I'm going to put a little bit of salt. Salt helps strengthen the gluten strands and helps a little bit of flavour. And a little bit of olive oil, because that just helps the suppleness really of the dough, and it just helps give it a slightly longer shelf life. And I'm going to add some yeast. Now, I've got 500 grams of bread flour in here. If I was making normal bread, I would normally do half the amount of water, so 250. But I'm actually going to add 400 mils of water and 1 teaspoon of yeast. And you can add the yeast straight to the flour. I'm going to put it in here just so it just activates it immediately. And so a lot of water, much more than you would use in normal bread. So the dough is going to be much stickier, but we want that water. We want that water to be soaking up into the starch of the flour and helping those gluten molecules to be softer. I'm going to use this because it is a stickier, wetter dough, and I don't want to be covered in flour for the rest of the session. So I'm just mixing that together. Now, the key thing about no knead bread is we don't want to over knead it. We don't want to overwork the gluten at this point, because if we do that, it will overstretch and it will collapse on itself, and you won't get quite as a decent, well-risen, full of air pocketed dough. So all I'm doing is just very gently forming it into this dough to make sort of quite a ragged looking dough, really. And then I'm just going to leave that. Now, it's really good to leave it for as long as possible. And I think in my recipe, I've put 2 hours and then have another look at it and then 2 hours. We actually made some yesterday and we've left it overnight. It's much better if you can leave it overnight. So it's quite a nice thing to do. Just do it one afternoon, one evening, just leave it like this, put a damp tea towel over it. That took me a couple of minutes, that's all. And then you can just leave that overnight, just out in your room. And then you don't have to do anything with it till the next day. So it's certainly no kneading. So I'm going to just put that one over there. This is one that I did this morning, probably about 3 hours ago. Yeah, about 3 hours ago. So it's already risen. I can already see that there's air bubbles in there. So the yeast is definitely activated. There's carbon dioxide going and it's being trapped into there. So because I've left it for a few hours, I'm just going to give it a very little, gentle knockback. So I'm just scraping the edges in, just to make sure the yeast is, and I can see it's beautifully stretchy, beautiful air bubbles in there. And I would just leave that now for another at least 2 hours and come back to it later on. And we'll come back to this bread a little bit later, because I want to show you how I bake it. So leave that for as long as possible again. And in the meantime, this is what I'm going to cook it in. So a big cast iron pot or a Dutch oven, something like that, really good to cook in here. And I need this really hot for it to go into the oven. So I'm going to put it in the oven now. I'm going to give it until I'm ready to come back to it to get it really, really, really hot. It's empty, there's nothing in there. I've done nothing to it. Completely empty pot. I'm just going to put it in the oven so that it gets really, really hot. Right, while those are doing their thing, I'm going to make a beer. So this is a different type of bread. Really simple again, no kneading. All I've got is flour, another 500 grams of bread flour in there, and I'm going to add into it some beer, some honey, and that's pretty much all I need. Probably a little bit of salt, just to help the strands. Pour my beer, 500 mils of beer in there. You can see all that fizz and yeastiness of the beer is really going to help give the bread its flavour and its. And I'm just going to add a little bit of honey into it as well, just for a little bit of sweetness. Give that a stir. Again, quite a liquid dough, but all that flour is going to really soak up that beer. The alcohol is going to be burnt off during the cooking to get a really lovely yeasty loaf of bread. So stir it round. I've got here, this is a 1 pound loaf tin. All I've done is just very lightly oil it. And I'm going to tip that in. And that's going to go into the oven. So okay, into the oven. And that's going to take about half an hour. It's surprising actually how quickly it does cook. So while that's doing, I'm going to show you a soda bread. And this is slightly different. It's not yeasted. It uses plain flour. We're going to put a little bit of bicarbonate of soda in. Just about a teaspoonful. Careful not to overdo it, otherwise it tastes a bit soapy. Again, a little bit of salt. And this one is going to have yogurt in it. So just some natural yogurt into that flour. And we'll give it a good stir. And then just so that it will bind, we're going to have a little bit of milk in there as well, just to help it come together and form a dough. So the beer bread and the soda bread, you don't need to add any yeast, you don't need to knead it, you just need to mix it up, put it in a tin and bake it. There's no waiting time. But obviously they're very different flavours to the No Knead Bread. And I'll show you the different textures. Second, when I formed this, so all I've done is mix that up. I've just got a very lightly floured baking sheet. And we'll just tip that on there. A big ball of dough. I'm just shaping it off a little bit. Just make it nice and round. And I'm going to do the traditional soda bread cut nearly all the way through, not quite all the way through, but sort of 3/4 down to the bottom of that baking sheet. Again, just dust a little bit of flour on it. Dusting of flour, cross it on the top, and then that goes straight into the oven. There we go. So that's now into the oven. So I'm going to show you now exactly what I do with my No Knead bread. So we'll pretend it's had even more kneading time. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to speed this process up a bit. Just a little bit of flour in there and on here. I'm just going to turn it out. It feels really lovely and warm because there's a lot of action going on in there with yeast. So I'm just rolling it. I'm not going to knead it. I don't want to over knead it. And then what I'm going to do is put it into an oiled bowl. A little bit more flour on the top. Okay. And I would leave that to rise again. So for as long as you can. An hour is probably, if you're thinking, oh, I want to get on with this now, I want my bread, probably about an hour will do in there. This is the point where you would normally put your cast iron pot into the oven to really heat it up. So I would leave that for another hour in an oiled bowl, covered with a tea towel, put my iron pot in the oven, and then I'm going to bake it. So pretend an hour has gone by, and we'll get the cast iron pot. Remember, this pot is going to be really, really hot. You've probably had it in there for about 45 minutes. I'm going to bring it out. Don't need to do anything with it. You can't really mind your fingers on it. And pretending this has had another hour's rising, I'm just going to tip it out onto my hand and put it oil side down. And when you've had that in there for 45 minutes, you will hear a sizzling sound. That's good. And I'm going to put the lid on. Remember, it's really hot. And I'm going to put it back into the oven. And it's going to have about half an hour. I've got it on hot, 230. Yeast likes a really hot temperature. So it's going to take about half an hour with the lid on to cook at 230. We need it that hot because what happens is you put that in the oven and the yeast speeds up all its fermentation process. So it's giving even more carbon dioxide off and making that bread rise, stretching that gluten out. So in about half an hour, I would take the lid off the pot and leave it for 15 minutes with no lid on it at all, because then that will just help to brown off the top of the loaf. So I'm going to show you the 3 finished breads. So let's move these. Okay, so these are the 3 breads that I've made for you this morning. So we've got our beer bread, really nice with things like butter and cheese and pickles and things like that. We've got our soda bread, really nice, again with soup, that sort of thing. And then we've got our no knead bread as well. So I'm going to cut them and show you them. The benefits of no knead bread: it tastes like bread. It's proper fermented yeasty bread with air holes in there. But it's taken the sort of the kneading effort out. The longer fermentation means the flavours develop more. Similar to sourdough type thinking, where the longer fermentation develops the flavour more. And a soft dough as well, because we've let that hydration happen as well. So it's been quite a wet dough, so it's quite soft. And then we've got our sourdough here. I'll cut this one first, so and then I can show. So here's our sourdough. There it is. Well, that would be really lovely with some soup and an autumnal bowl of vegetable soup and a nice slice of sourdough bread. Or toasted for breakfast would be really nice. The shelf life of these breads, if you really handle them carefully, don't put them in cling film or plastic bags or anything. Just gently wrap them in a tea towel or in a paper bag, and they will probably last 2 to 3 days. But if you feel it's getting a bit dry, toast it, or just sprinkle a little bit of water on it and just put it back in the oven, and it'll go nice and crusty on the outside, but still perfectly usable. So that's our soda bread. I'm going to do the beer bread next. And this is our beer bread, nice and soft, and look, lovely texture again. Smells really lovely. Again, yeah, as I say, lovely on things like ploughman's platters with soup, that sort of thing. And then we come to the no knead bread. Can you hear that crustiness? And when I took this out of the oven, I baked this off this morning. I left it overnight to ferment, and then I did my short knock back. Left it for an hour and then baked it half an hour with the lid on, and then 15 minutes without the lid on. It's got a nice crustiness to it. Now, if you like a softer finished bread, as soon as it comes out the oven, wrap it up in a tea towel, because then the condensation will occur and will be trapped within the bread, and you get a softer finish. If you like a crustier finish, then obviously don't wrap it up. Let it evaporate and cool down in the air, and you get a crustier finish. So something lovely about cutting fresh bread. So here we go. Look at those lovely holes, all those air gaps in there. Beautiful springy texture because you've stretched that gluten. Really lovely. Such a good way of making bread, because if you do have weak joints, weak muscles, you're not feeling 100%, you haven't got to put all that effort in. You just make your dough, leave it in a bowl, leave it overnight, come back, bake it off. You've still got the flavour of bread. It is bread, but you've got beautiful crusty loaf. And there is some scientific evidence to say that you can actually digest it better because you've given it that longer fermentation time. So there we go. Beautiful bread. And I think the others are, there'll be a few minutes yet, but do have a go at any of those. They are lovely. I'm running an event tomorrow. We run pop-up restaurants, and I'm going to wrap these up really well, and then just finish them back off in the oven tomorrow. And we're serving some soup, and it's British food fortnight, so we're doing things like bangers and mash and soups using vegetables from our garden, and so on. And then we'll have all this bread to go with it as well. Thank you for watching, and please do visit our social media sites, Ferry Project, Fascinating Food. Have a look. We have books that we sell as well, and we will be back again in a week or two. Thank you.